The Alien Council had never seen a species respond to an ultimatum with silence. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe for more HFY stories. High Chancellor Vexrin of the Valorian Empire stood at the observation deck of the Eternal Dominion, his ceremonial robes catching the cold light of Sol's distant star. Behind him, the blue-green marble of Earth rotated with maddening indifference. 72 hours had passed since he'd delivered the Empire's terms. 72 hours of nothing. "Still no response?" he asked, his vocal mandibles clicking with irritation. Subcommander Krelix consulted his data slate, his secondary arms gesturing in the Valorian sign for uncertainty. "None, High Chancellor. Their communication networks remain active. They've acknowledged receipt of the ultimatum. Oh, but they've sent no formal reply." Vexrin's spine ridge flared, a biological tell he'd spent decades learning to suppress. The Valorian Empire had conquered 47 star systems across 3 centuries. They'd perfected the art of subjugation. The formula was simple: arrive with overwhelming force, present impossible terms, wait for the inevitable capitulation. Species always chose survival over pride. Always. "Run the analysis again," Vexrin commanded. "Show me why they're stalling." The holographic display materialized before them, casting pale blue light across the command deck. Earth hung at its center, surrounded by tactical data that should have told the complete story of humanity's insignificance. "Single inhabited world," Krelix recited, his voice carrying the rehearsed confidence of 1,000 successful conquests. "No extrasolar colonies. Defensive fleet numbering approximately 300 vessels. Primitive fusion drives, kinetic weapons, chemical propulsion for atmospheric craft. No energy shielding detected. No quantum communications. No exotic matter manipulation." He paused, mandibles spreading in what passed for a Valorian smile. "High Chancellor, they barely qualify as a spacefaring civilization." Around them, the bridge crew of the Eternal Dominion worked with mechanical precision. Valorian efficiency was legendary. Every officer knew their role. Every system hummed with centuries of refined doctrine. The Empire's diplomatic corps had reduced first contact to a science. They'd calculated the psychological breaking point of dozens of species. They knew exactly how long to let silence stretch before a civilization cracked. And humans should have cracked 30 hours ago. "Their military posture?" Vexrin asked. "Defensive formations around their homeworld and inter-system installations," reported the tactical officer. "No aggressive maneuvers, no weapons lock warnings. They're maintaining standard patrol patterns." That was the first crack in Vexrin's confidence, though he'd never admit it aloud. When the Empire arrived, 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, and the Eternal Dominion herself. Species typically scrambled. Fleets mobilized. Governments collapsed into emergency sessions. Populations panicked. Earth's satellites continued their lazy orbits. Their vessels maintained routine patterns. Their cities glowed with uninterrupted light. It was as if the Valorian Empire's arrival meant nothing at all. "Oh, perhaps they don't understand the terms," suggested Krelix. "Their translation algorithms might be primitive. Should we simplify the language?" Vexrin considered this. The ultimatum had been clear. Humanity would disarm its military, submit to Valorian governance, provide annual tribute of raw materials and biological specimens, and accept Empire administrators on their world. Refusal meant orbital bombardment followed by ground invasion. They had one planetary cycle to comply. Standard terms, standard threats, standard procedure. "Send the ultimatum again," Vexrin ordered. "Include visual references. Make it impossible to misunderstand." The communications officer complied, her movements quick and efficient. The message transmitted, encoded in 17 different formats, accompanied by tactical projections showing exactly what Valorian weapons could do to an unshielded planet. 5 minutes later, A response finally came. "High Chancellor," the communications officer announced, her voice uncertain. "We've received acknowledgement from Earth." "Their acceptance?" Vexrin asked. "Not exactly, sir. They've requested a formal negotiation, face-to-face. They're inviting you to their orbital diplomatic station." A ripple of surprise moved through the bridge crew. In 3 centuries, only twice had a species requested negotiation after receiving the Empire's terms. Both times, those species had been obliterated as examples to others. Vexrin's spine ridge flattened, a gesture of dark amusement. They want to negotiate. How charmingly naive. He turned to Krelix. "Assemble a diplomatic delegation. Bring full security detail. If these humans want to plead for better terms before their inevitable surrender, we'll at least give them the dignity of hearing their desperation." "Should we consider it a potential trap?" Krelix asked. Vexrin gestured toward the holographic display, toward the primitive vessels, the single world, the absence of any technology that could threaten the Empire. A trap? From them? He clicked his mandibles in the Valorian equivalent of laughter. "They're inviting us to their station, in their territory, surrounded by our fleet. If anything, Sub-Commander, it's a sign of submission. They simply want to preserve some illusion of agency before accepting our terms." But as Vexrin returned his gaze to Earth, something nagged at the edge of his thoughts. The silence had been wrong. The calm had been wrong. And now this, an invitation delivered with neither panic nor defeat in its tone. The humans had sent a single line: "We accept your request for negotiation. Ambassador Chen Wei will meet you at Diplomatic Station Unity. Come prepared to discuss revised terms." Revised terms. The audacity should have been insulting. Instead, it felt like something else entirely. It felt like a warning. Diplomatic Station Unity hung in high Earth orbit like a silver ring, its rotating sections generating artificial gravity through simple centrifugal force. Vexrin noted this as his shuttle approached. They hadn't even mastered gravity manipulation. The Empire had possessed that technology for 800 years. The docking procedure was smooth, almost suspiciously so. A human traffic control guided them with precision that seemed at odds with their supposed primitiveness. No errors, no delays, no nervousness in the controller's voice. Krelix commanded the security detail, 20 Valorian shock troops in full combat armor, weapons visible and humming with readiness. Protocol demanded overwhelming presence. The humans needed to understand that even in negotiation, they were outmatched. The airlock cycled. The interior corridor beyond was wrong. Vexrin had expected something crude, industrial, hastily assembled. Instead, the diplomatic station gleamed with clean lines and efficient design. Soft lighting that didn't strain Valorian eyes. Atmosphere composition perfectly balanced for their biology. Temperature ideal within 0.3 degrees. They'd prepared for Valorian physiology specifically, all down to minute details. "This way, High Chancellor," came a voice, human, female, speaking flawless Valorian, without translation delay. A human woman stood at the corridor's end, wearing simple gray attire that suggested formality without ostentation. She was small by Valorian standards, her features arranged in an expression that Vexrin's cultural database labeled as diplomatic neutrality. But her eyes, dark, steady, unnervingly direct, held something his database couldn't categorize. Confidence. Not the false bravado of a desperate negotiator, not the manic energy of a species facing annihilation, just confidence. "I am Ambassador Chen Wei," she said, inclining her head in a gesture that somehow managed to acknowledge their presence without suggesting deference. "Welcome to Diplomatic Station Unity, please. Follow me to the negotiation chamber." Vexrin exchanged a glance with Krelix. The sub-commander's spine ridge was slightly elevated, unease barely perceptible. They followed Chen through corridors that were too well designed, too carefully constructed for a species that allegedly barely qualified as spacefaring. The walls displayed no art, no propaganda, no desperate attempts to impress, just clean, functional efficiency. The negotiation chamber was circular, with a round table at its center. No head position, no tactical advantage. Chen gestured to seats that had been precisely scaled for Valorian physiology. "Please, be comfortable," Chen said, taking her own seat with fluid grace. "May I offer refreshments? We've prepared several options compatible with Valorian biochemistry." "That won't be necessary," Vexrin said, settling into his seat with his delegation arranged around him. "We're here to accept your formal surrender, Ambassador. The refreshments can wait until after you've signed the terms." Chen's expression didn't change. She folded her hands on the table, small, unaugmented hands that should have been trembling. They weren't. "I appreciate your directness, High Chancellor," she said. "Before we discuss terms, I'd like to clarify a few points about the Empire's proposal. For the record." Vexrin's mandibles clicked impatiently. "The terms are not proposals, Ambassador. They are requirements." "Of course," Chen agreed smoothly. "Nevertheless, precision matters in diplomacy. You've required that humanity disarm its military forces. This would include our orbital defense platforms." "Correct?" "Obviously. All 300 vessels in our fleet?" "Correct. And the additional 473 vessels currently operating beyond Neptune's orbit." The chamber went silent. Vexrin's spine ridge shot upright. "What?" Chen touched the table's surface. A holographic display materialized, not primitive, not crude, but crystal clear and impossibly detailed. It showed the Sol system, Earth, the Valorian fleet in high orbit. And beyond, in the outer system, hundreds of contact signatures that hadn't appeared on any of the Empire's scans. "I apologize for the confusion," Chen said, her tone remaining perfectly even. "Our initial fleet count was incomplete. We maintain a rather extensive presence in the outer system. Deep space patrol and research vessels, mostly. I wanted to confirm whether these would also need to be decommissioned under your terms." Krelix was already working his data slate frantically, mandibles clicking in rapid distress. "High Chancellor, our long-range sensors show no such vessels. This is clearly a fabrication." "Your sensors are operating on standard Valorian active scanning protocols," Chen interrupted gently. "Frequency range 12.4 to 18.7 terahertz, with gravitational anomaly detection in the standard Empire spectrum. Am I correct?" The fact that she knew this stopped Krelix mid-sentence. "Those vessels," Chen continued, gesturing to the hologram, "operate with passive thermal suppression and quantum state hull coating. Your sensors wouldn't detect them, but they're quite real, I assure you." Vexrin forced his spine ridge down. This was a bluff. It had to be. "Ambassador, let's dispense with theatrics. Even if you possess stealth vessels, which I doubt, the quantity of ships is irrelevant against the Empire's military superiority." "Of course," Chen agreed. "Which brings me to my second question. You've required annual tribute of raw materials. The terms specify thorium, platinum group metals, and rare earth elements. However, the amounts listed suggest your intelligence on our planetary reserves is approximately 40 years out of date. Would you like updated figures?" "40 years?" Vexrin began, then caught himself. "Our intelligence is current." "Your intelligence is based on spectroscopic analysis of Earth's crust and electromagnetic signatures from our mining operations," Chen said. "Both accurate for their time. But we've since developed deep mantle extraction techniques. Our actual reserves are—" She paused, consulting her own display. "Approximately 17 times larger than your estimates." She looked up, meeting Vexrin's eyes directly. I mention this only because the tribute amounts you've specified would barely register as a rounding error in our current production. I want to ensure the Empire isn't undervaluing its own demands." Around the table, the Valorian delegation sat in stunned silence. This wasn't how negotiations proceeded. Species didn't correct the Empire's intelligence estimates. They didn't calmly suggest that the terms weren't harsh enough. "Ambassador Chen," Vexrin said carefully, his voice hardening, "you seem to be under a dangerous misapprehension. The Empire's terms are not subject to revision. Well, your technological boasts don't change the fundamental reality of your situation. We have 12 dreadnoughts and 40 cruisers in orbit of your homeworld. Each one carries weaponry capable of turning your continents to glass. Cooperate, and your species survives. Resist, and you'll fire your plasma lance arrays," Chen finished for him. Each dreadnought carries 6 primary lances. Output approximately 4.7 petawatts per discharge, with a recharge cycle of 43 seconds. Your cruisers supplement with mass driver bombardment, tungsten rods, 4-ton payload, terminal velocity 0.3% light speed, devastating against planetary infrastructure. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Your targeting protocols prioritize population centers," Chen continued, her voice never wavering from that same diplomatic neutrality. "So, orbital bombardment doctrine calls for demonstration strikes first, military installations, then secondary industrial centers, before escalating to civilian targets. This is designed to encourage surrender while preserving productive capacity. Standard Empire procedure for 312 years. Vexrin couldn't move, couldn't speak. Every word she'd spoken was classified at the highest levels of Empire military command. "How?" Krelix started. "I'm outlining this," Chen said, "because I want you to understand that we've done our research, High Chancellor, just as you've researched us. The difference is—" She leaned forward slightly. "Our research is current." Vexrin's combat instincts screamed at him. This was wrong, all of it. "So, you're claiming you've infiltrated Empire intelligence networks." "I'm not claiming anything," Chen replied. "I'm simply demonstrating that we've prepared for this conversation very carefully. Now, you mentioned revised terms. I believe there's been a misunderstanding." She touched her display again. "These are the terms we'll be discussing today." A new document appeared in the holographic space above the table. Vexrin's translator struggled with it for a moment before rendering it in Valorian script. It was a list of demands from humanity to the Empire. "This is—" Krelix's voice cracked. "This is insanity." "These are humanity's terms," Chen said calmly. "Complete withdrawal of Valorian forces from Sol system. Formal recognition of human sovereignty over all territories within 30 light-years of Earth. Now, reparations for violated territorial space. We're still calculating the exact amount, but preliminary figures suggest—" "Enough!" Vexrin's roar echoed through the chamber. His security detail raised their weapons. Around the table, the Valorian delegation bristled with outrage and fear. Chen didn't flinch. "High Chancellor," she said quietly, "I would ask your security detail to lower their weapons. For their own safety. For their—" Vexrin couldn't even finish the sentence. The absurdity was beyond comprehension. Then Krelix made a sound, a high-pitched click of pure distress. He was staring at his data slate, his secondary arms trembling. "High Chancellor," he whispered, "our encrypted communications with the fleet, they're not working." "What?" "The quantum encrypted channels, all of them, offline. That we can't reach the Eternal Dominion. We can't reach any of our ships." Chen's expression remained neutral, but Vexrin saw it now, the absolute certainty in her eyes. The look of someone holding every card, waiting patiently for everyone else to realize the game was over. "As I said," Chen repeated softly, "we've prepared for this conversation very carefully. Now, shall we discuss the revised terms, or would you prefer to contact your fleet first? She paused, and for the first time, the slightest hint of something sharp entered her voice. Oh, wait, you can't. Vexrin's spine ridge was fully extended now, a biological response he couldn't control. Fear. Pure, primal fear that no amount of diplomatic training could suppress. What have you done? He demanded. Chen stood, her movements unhurried. She walked to the chamber's observation window, gesturing for them to follow. Vexrin rose on instinct, his security detail moving with him, weapons still raised, but trembling now. Through the transparent aluminum, Earth rotated below, peaceful and blue. Beyond it, the Valorian fleet hung in perfect formation. Perfect. Motionless. Silent. We haven't done anything to your fleet, Chen said. Not yet. We've simply asked them to wait. Asked? Krelix's voice was nearly a screech. You can't just... Chen touched a control on her wrist. The observation window's display shifted, overlaying tactical data across the view, and Vexrin's world shattered. The 473 vessels Chen had mentioned materialized on the display, but they weren't in the outer system anymore. They were here. Surrounding the Valorian fleet in a perfect three-dimensional lattice, each human vessel positioned precisely to create overlapping fields of fire on every single Empire ship. They'd been there the entire time, invisible, waiting. Our vessels use quantum state hull plating, Chen explained, her tone taking on the quality of a professor delivering a lecture. It's not true invisibility. That would violate several conservation laws. Rather, we redirect electromagnetic radiation around the hull using controlled manipulation of the quantum vacuum. Your sensors see exactly what we want them to see, which, until now, was nothing. Vexrin stared at the display. 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, the pride of the Valorian Empire, completely surrounded, outmaneuvered, outpositioned. This is impossible, he whispered. So you're a single-system species. You have no colonies, no interstellar infrastructure. We've monitored your development for 40 years. You've only had fusion drives for 37 years. You can't possibly... 43 years, Chen corrected gently. We achieved sustainable fusion 43 years ago. But you're quite right that we haven't established any colonies. We saw no need to expand when we were still studying our neighbors. Studying? The Empire's expansion patterns are remarkably predictable, Chen continued. You move through sectors methodically, subjugating species with calculated precision. Your route would inevitably bring you here. So we waited. We watched. We learned everything about you while you saw only what you expected to see, a primitive, isolated world ripe for conquest. She turned from the window, Inev facing Vexrin directly. Did you know your quantum encryption has a mathematical vulnerability? It's quite elegant, actually. The algorithm relies on prime factorization of pseudo-random number generators seeded with your imperial timestamp. Clever but predictable once you understand the pattern. We've been reading your encrypted communications for 16 years. Krelix dropped his data slate. The clatter echoed in the silent chamber. 16 years, Chen repeated. Every fleet movement, every tactical doctrine, every classified technology specification. The vulnerability in your plasma lance capacitor systems. The override codes for your ship AI. The medical weaknesses in Valorian combat physiology. We know about the neural shock that occurs when your spine ridge extends beyond 70%. But we know about the respiratory paralysis triggered by specific harmonic frequencies. We know everything, High Chancellor. You're bluffing, Vexrin said, but his voice was hollow. If you possessed such capabilities, you would have used them. You would have struck first. Why? Chen asked simply. We're not conquerors, High Chancellor. We're not interested in expanding our territory or subjugating other species. We simply wanted to be left alone. But you came here with threats of annihilation, with demands for surrender, and you forced our hand. She walked back to the table, touching her display. The hologram shifted again. "This is the current status of your fleet," she said. The display showed each Valorian vessel in microscopic detail. Inside their systems, all the threads of blue light wound through every critical component: weapon systems, navigation, life support, communications, reactor containment. "Those blue indicators," Chen explained, "represent our access points. We're currently inside every ship in your fleet. We've been inside them since the moment you entered Sol's system. Your ships responded to our handshake protocols automatically, a feature your designers built in for emergency Imperial override. Very useful. We simply convinced your systems that we were Imperial Command issuing priority updates." Vexrin felt his legs weaken. He gripped the table for support. "At this moment," Chen continued, her voice maddeningly calm, "we control your fleet more completely than you do. Your weapons won't fire without our permission. Your engines won't engage. But your life support runs at our discretion. You came here to deliver an ultimatum, High Chancellor. Instead, you delivered yourselves." "This is an act of war," Vexrin managed. "The Empire has 600 dreadnoughts, thousands of cruisers, entire battle fleets. When they learn what you've done—" "They already know," Chen interrupted. "Your flagship transmitted automated status reports every 43 minutes. We ensured those transmissions continued, but we modified them. Slightly. Your High Command believes this negotiation is proceeding exactly as expected, that Earth is capitulating, that you'll return with our signed surrender." She paused, letting that sink in. "Meanwhile, vessels similar to the ones surrounding your fleet are currently positioned at each of the Empire's border worlds, not invading, not attacking, just present. Waiting. Like this conversation, High Chancellor, we wanted to have the Empire's full attention before revealing certain facts." The observation window's display shifted again. Vexrin saw Valorian worlds, core systems, border territories, military installations, each one marked with the same blue indicators showing human infiltration. Hundreds of human vessels, all invisible, all waiting in perfect position. "You've been planning this," Vexrin breathed, "for decades." 43 years, Chen confirmed, "since the moment we achieved fusion power and realized we weren't alone. We monitored first contact scenarios across the galaxy. We studied the patterns, the Empire, the Krynoth hegemony, the Talshik collective, always the same. Stronger civilizations absorbing weaker ones, ultimatums, threats, subjugation." She leaned forward. And for the first time, Vexrin saw something other than diplomatic neutrality in her expression. Something harder, something that had been forged over decades of preparation. "So we made a choice," Chen said. "We could hide, hope you never found us, live in fear. We could run, scatter to the stars, abandon our home. Or we could prepare. We could learn. We could ensure that when you finally arrived with your ultimatums and your threats, we would be ready." "You could have revealed yourselves," Vexrin said desperately. "Announced your capabilities. The Empire respects strength. We could have had a peaceful first contact." "Could we?" Chen asked. "Your own protocols state that any species demonstrating military technology beyond expected parameters is classified as a potential threat requiring immediate neutralization. If we'd revealed our true capabilities, you would have brought not 12 dreadnoughts, but 100. You would have bombarded Earth from beyond our defensive range, scoured our world clean, and moved on. We've seen you do it before." She was right. The Empire had executed that exact protocol 11 times. "So instead," Chen continued, "we let you see exactly what you expected to see. A primitive world, weak defenses, no threat. We let you come close. We let you bring your fleet into our territory. We let you sit at this table, confident in your superiority. And now, High Chancellor, you're going to listen to our terms." The holographic document reappeared, humanity's demands hanging in the air like a death sentence. Immediate withdrawal of all Valorian forces from Sol system, Chen read. Some formal recognition of human sovereignty and a 30-light-year exclusion zone. Reparations calculated based on resource expenditure required to prepare for your invasion. Complete cessation of all intelligence operations directed at Earth. And finally, she looked up, meeting Vexrin's eyes. A formal treaty guaranteeing non-aggression, signed not just by you, but by the Imperial High Council itself. The Council will never. The Council, Chen said quietly, is currently watching a live feed of this conversation. We've been broadcasting it directly to the Imperial Palace for the last 6 minutes. They're also watching feeds from our vessels positioned at their border worlds. They're reviewing the intelligence reports we've compiled, evidence of our infiltration into every level of Empire communications. Oh, and they're reading a comprehensive analysis of what would happen if we decided to stop being quite so patient. She touched her display one final time. New data appeared. Tactical projections, casualty estimates, infrastructure damage assessments. The numbers were staggering. We don't want war, High Chancellor, Chen said. We never did. But if you force our hand, we can cripple the Empire in 17 hours. We can shut down your communications, disable your fleets, blind your sensors, and turn your own defensive systems against you. We won't invade. We won't conquer. We'll simply flip a switch, and the mighty Valorian Empire will go dark. Silence filled the chamber. Outside the window, the Valorian fleet hung motionless, surrounded by invisible predators. Below, Earth rotated peacefully, utterly unconcerned. Vexrin understood, finally, what that silence 72 hours ago had meant. It hadn't been fear or confusion or desperation. It had been patience. The patience of a species that had spent 4 decades preparing for this exact moment. The patience of hunters who had laid the perfect trap. The patience of beings who knew, with absolute certainty, that they held all the power and could afford to wait. "You're not a primitive species," Vexrin whispered. "No," Chen agreed. "We're not." "You never were." "No, we simply chose to appear that way. It's remarkable what people will overlook when they believe they're superior." Vexrin looked at his delegation, officers who had spent lifetimes conquering worlds, now sitting in paralyzed shock. He looked at his security detail, their weapons useless against an enemy that controlled the very station they stood on. He looked at Krelix, mandibles trembling, spine ridge collapsed in submission. And he looked at Chen Wei, this small human woman who had just dismantled an interstellar empire without firing a single shot. "What guarantee do we have," he asked hoarsely, "that you won't use this power to conquer the Empire yourselves?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "You have our word, and our history. We've had the capability to strike for 16 years, High Chancellor. We never did. We could have destroyed your fleet the moment it entered our space. We didn't. We could collapse your empire right now. We won't, because unlike you, we don't believe strength gives us the right to subjugate others." She stood, gesturing to the document floating between them. "These are our terms. Accept them, and this ends peacefully. Your fleet returns home intact. Beto, your empire continues, wiser and more careful about who you threaten. We return to our quiet corner of space, and the galaxy remains stable." She paused. "Refuse them, and we demonstrate exactly how thoroughly we've prepared for your answer. The choice, High Chancellor, is yours. But understand this," she added, her voice carrying a steel edge that Vexrin had never heard in a negotiation. "You came here to dictate terms to humanity. Instead, humanity is dictating terms to you. That is the only outcome that was ever possible. The only variable was whether you'd be wise enough to accept it." Vexrin stared at the document, at the impossible, humiliating, absolute terms, and realized he had no choice at all. Humanity had already won. They'd won 43 years ago, the moment they'd decided to prepare instead of hide. The signing took 11 minutes. Vexrin's hand, his primary manipulator, the one reserved for the most sacred of imperial oaths, trembled as he pressed his genetic seal to the document. The holographic interface registered his biological signature, binding him, and by extension, the Valorian Empire, to humanity's terms. Chen watched without triumph, without gloating, just that same quiet certainty. "Your fleet will be released in stages," she explained as the document finalized. "We'll restore communications first, then navigation control, then weapons systems. The process will take approximately 40 minutes. Your vessels will find their systems completely intact. We've removed our access points and closed the vulnerabilities we exploited. Consider it a gesture of good faith." "How generous," Vexrin said bitterly. "It is." Actually," Chen replied, "we could have left those back doors in place. We could have maintained permanent control over your fleet. We chose not to. That should tell you something about our intentions, High Chancellor." Krelix was still staring at his data slate, which had suddenly come back to life. Status reports flooded in from the fleet. Confused, panicked transmissions from ship commanders who'd spent the last hour watching their systems operate independently of their commands. "The Imperial Council is requesting immediate communication," Krelix said quietly. "Priority Alpha. They've already prepared a response to the terms." "Of course they have," Chen said. "They've been watching this entire negotiation. I imagine they've spent the last 30 minutes in emergency session." She gestured to the communication console. "Ates, please, establish the link. I believe they'll want to hear this directly." The holographic display shimmered, resolving into the image of the Imperial High Council, 7 Valorians in ceremonial robes, their spine ridges perfectly controlled, despite what Vexrin could see was considerable effort. At the center sat High Counselor Drathix, eldest of the council, his scales bearing the pale patina of 3 centuries. "High Chancellor Vexrin," Drathix said, his voice carrying across light years with crystalline clarity. "We have reviewed the situation." "High Counselor," Vexrin began, but Drathix raised a hand. "The Council has voted 6-1. We accept the human terms." The words hit like a physical blow. Around the table, Vexrin's delegation sat in stunned silence. The Empire had never capitulated, not once in 3 centuries. They had obliterated species who refused to submit. They had turned worlds to cinders rather than show weakness. And now, "We accept complete withdrawal from Sol system," Drathix continued, his voice steady but hollow. "We recognize human sovereignty and the 30 light-year exclusion zone. We will pay the calculated reparations over the agreed timeline. We will cease all intelligence operations directed at Earth." He paused, his spine ridge flickering, a momentary lapse in control. "And we acknowledge that humanity possesses both the capability and the demonstrated restraint to be recognized as a sovereign power in this galaxy." Chen inclined her head. "The Council's wisdom is appreciated, High Counselor. Humanity accepts your acceptance." "However," Drathix said, and something hard entered his voice, "So the Council demands clarification. Your vessels are positioned at 17 of our border worlds. Your terms specify only Sol system. We require assurance of your intentions." "Our intentions are exactly what we've stated," Chen replied. "Those vessels will withdraw once your fleet has departed Sol system and the treaty is formally ratified. They're present only to ensure compliance. We have no interest in your territory, High Counselor. We never did. And yet you've demonstrated you could take it." "We've demonstrated we could cripple your empire," Chen corrected. "Taking territory, holding it, governing it, that requires an entirely different kind of commitment. One we have no interest in making. We're not conquerors. We're defenders. The difference is significant." Drathix studied her through the holographic connection. "You speak of restraint, Ambassador, But you've shattered the Empire's intelligence networks. You've infiltrated our most secure systems. You've positioned your forces in our space. These are not the actions of a purely defensive civilization. No, Chen agreed. They're the actions of a civilization that learned the hard way that hoping for peace isn't enough. You don't get to threaten us with annihilation and then complain when we respond with preparation. We did what we needed to do to ensure our survival. Nothing more. Nothing more? Drathix's spine ridge elevated slightly. Ambassador, you've positioned yourselves as the dominant military power in 3 sectors. You've demonstrated technology decades beyond our own. You've compromised the security of the oldest empire in known space. These revelations will cascade through the galactic community within days. The political ramifications alone will ensure that no one else makes the mistake you made, Chen interrupted. Yes, that's rather the point. We could have remained hidden, revealed ourselves only when directly threatened, and fought a defensive war that would have cost billions of lives. Instead, we chose to make an example, not through destruction, but through demonstration. Every species that hears this story will understand one crucial fact. Humanity can defend itself. Absolutely. Overwhelmingly. And we will. She leaned forward slightly. But they'll also learn that we chose negotiation over annihilation. That we had the power to destroy and chose not to use it. That we honored our word even when we held every advantage. Or what do you think that will do to the Empire's reputation, High Counselor? You came here to conquer a primitive world. Instead, you provided humanity with the perfect stage to announce our presence to the galaxy. On our terms, with our values on full display. The silence from the council was profound. Drathix's expression shifted, a complex play of emotion that Vexrin recognized after 3 decades of Imperial service. Anger, yes. Humiliation, certainly. But beneath that, something else. Calculation. Reassessment. The cold logic that had built an empire across 3 centuries, now processing a galaxy that had fundamentally changed. You've thought this through carefully, Drathix said finally. We've had 43 years, Chen replied. Yes, we've thought it through. And if others don't share your restraint? If your demonstration encourages other species to develop similar capabilities to strike preemptively against perceived threats, then the galaxy becomes more dangerous, Chen acknowledged, but also more balanced. The age of casual conquest, of strong civilizations subjugating weak ones. That age is ending, High Counselor. We're not the only species that will reach this conclusion. We're simply the first to act on it. Would you prefer a galaxy where strength comes with responsibility, or one where might makes right until someone stronger comes along? Drathix was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, the other council members sat in rigid attention, their spine ridges betraying varying degrees of distress and acceptance. The treaty will be ratified within 6 hours, Drathix said finally. Your terms will be honored in full. The Valorian Empire acknowledges the sovereignty of humanity. The words cost him. Vexrin could see it in every microscopic tension in the High Counselor's posture. And Ambassador, Drathix added, his voice dropping to something almost conversational, when the formal diplomatic channels are established, I would very much like to understand how you achieved quantum state hull plating, not for military purposes. The Empire's expansion days are apparently over, but for scientific exchange, if you're willing. Chen's expression softened. We'll consider it, High Counselor. Humanity values scientific cooperation, once trust is established. Trust, Drathix repeated, as if tasting an unfamiliar concept. Yes, perhaps that's what we should have sought in the first place. The connection terminated. And in the sudden silence of the negotiation chamber, Vexrin stood slowly. His security detail had lowered their weapons minutes ago. His delegation sat in various states of shock and resignation. The mighty Valorian Empire had been outmaneuvered, outthought, and outplayed by a species they dismissed as primitive. "What happens now?" he asked Chen. "Now?" Chen walked back to the observation window. Outside, the Valorian fleet was beginning to move, cautiously, carefully, as systems came back under their control. "Now you return to your ships. You withdraw from Sol system. You report to your council, and you help them understand that the galaxy has changed." "Changed," Vexrin repeated numbly. "There's a species called the Gentari," Chen said, apparently changing subjects. "Small, insectoid, non-aggressive. Your expansion plans had them scheduled for annexation in 8 months. They would have been given the same ultimatum you brought us. They would have had no choice but to submit." She turned to face him. "Contact them, High Chancellor. Tell them what happened here. Suggest they might want to invest in better defenses. Be specific about why." Vexrin stared at her. "You want us to warn your potential allies?" "I want you to prevent future conflicts," Chen corrected. "Every species you warn is one less species we'll need to demonstrate our capabilities to, one less potential confrontation, one less risk of escalation. You came here as conquerors. Leave as teachers. Show the galaxy that the Empire can adapt, can learn. It might just save you." "Save us from what?" Chen's expression turned somber. "From becoming irrelevant. All the Krynoth hegemony is watching this. So is the Talshik Collective. So are a dozen other powers who've operated under the same assumptions you did, that strength equals dominion. That technology determines destiny. Some of them will learn the right lessons, others won't. The galaxy is about to become very complicated, High Chancellor. The Emperor can either adapt to this new reality or be swept aside by it." She gestured to the door. "Your shuttle is ready. Communications are fully restored. Your fleet awaits your orders. Go home, High Chancellor. Tell them what you learned here. And remember, humanity will be watching." The Eternal Dominion broke orbit 37 minutes later. Vexrin stood on the bridge, kept watching Earth shrink in the view screen, that blue-green marble that had shattered an empire's confidence without firing a single shot. Around him, his crew worked in silence, the usual efficiency now tinged with something else. Humility, perhaps even fear. "All vessels report successful system restoration," Krelix announced quietly. "Navigation, weapons, communications, all functioning normally." The humans left no trace of their infiltration. No trace except the knowledge that they'd been there, that they could return whenever they wished. "Set course for the border," Vexrin ordered. "Standard fleet formation. And Sub-Commander, send a priority message to Imperial Intelligence. Tell them to begin compiling everything we know about the Gentari. Everything." Krelix's spine ridge flickered with surprise. "Sir?" The humans were right. The galaxy has changed. We can either change with it or become a cautionary tale in someone else's history. Vexrin turned from the view screen. The age of casual conquest is over. It's time the Empire learned to operate in a universe where strength doesn't guarantee dominance. As the Valorian fleet accelerated away from Sol system, the 473 human vessels remained in position, watching, silent guardians ensuring the departure proceeded as agreed. Only when the last Valorian ship crossed the 30-light-year boundary did they begin to move. They didn't follow. They simply faded from sensors, returning to whatever impossible stealth had hidden them for so long. Within minutes, the Sol system appeared exactly as it had when the Valorians first arrived, a single inhabited world. 300 vessels in standard patrol, no visible threat. But Vexrin knew the truth now. Every species that heard this story would know it. Earth wasn't undefended. It had never been undefended. It had simply been patient. 3 days later, the Imperial High Council ratified the treaty in a closed session. The vote was unanimous. 6 hours after that, the Galactic Communications Network carried a brief, carefully worded announcement. The Valorian Empire formally recognized human sovereignty and established diplomatic relations with Earth. Details of the negotiation were classified. They remained classified for exactly 14 hours. Then the leaks began. Ship logs from the Eternal Dominion, communications intercepts, sensor data showing human vessels appearing from nowhere, testimony from Valorian officers describing systems operating independently, weapons refusing to fire, an entire fleet rendered helpless without a shot being fired. The story spread like radiation through a solar wind. In the halls of the Krynoth hegemony, military planners suddenly questioned every assumption about human capability. In the merchant lanes of the Tal-Shik Collective, traders began rerouting courses to pass through Sol system, hoping to establish relationships with this new power. In a dozen border territories, species that had lived under the threat of conquest looked toward Earth with something they hadn't felt in generations: hope. On the Gentari homeworld, the Planetary Council received an encrypted message from High Chancellor Vexrin himself. It was brief, factual, and contained detailed specifications for defensive improvements. The message ended with a single line: "Learn from our mistake. Prepare." In the depths of Valorian space, Imperial intelligence worked frantically to close the vulnerabilities humans had exploited. They found 17 different access points, 11 backdoors in communication protocols, 6 weaknesses in quantum encryption algorithms. Each discovery was more humbling than the last. The humans hadn't just infiltrated their systems. They'd understood them better than the Valorians themselves did. And across the galaxy, in research stations and military academies and council chambers, a new question dominated every strategic discussion. If humanity could do this to the Valorian Empire, what else were they capable of on diplomatic station Unity? Ambassador Chen Wei stood in the observation deck, watching the stars. The Valorian fleet was gone. The crisis was over. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy not with conquest or destruction, but with a demonstration of strength tempered by restraint. Captain Sarah Okonkwo materialized beside her, the quantum stealth field dropping as she stepped into the visible spectrum. She'd commanded one of the vessels in the outer system, part of the invisible net that had surrounded the Valorian fleet. "All ships have returned to designated positions," Okonkwo reported. "No incidents. The Valorians withdrew exactly as agreed." "Good," Chen said. "How are the crews?" "Relieved, proud, a little surprised we pulled it off." Okonkwo moved to stand beside Chen at the window. 43 years of preparation. And it came down to 11 minutes of negotiation. "It came down to making them understand what we'd become," Chen corrected. "The technology, the infiltration, the positioning, all of that was prologue. The real victory was convincing them that we'd use our power responsibly, that we weren't a threat, just a species that refused to be threatened." "Do you think they believed it?" Chen was quiet for a moment. "I think they want to believe it. Whether they actually do, we'll find out. The galaxy's watching us now, Sarah. Every decision we make, every response to provocation, every diplomatic overture, it all matters. We bought ourselves security with this demonstration, but we'll have to earn respect the hard way. By proving every single day that we meant what we said." "No pressure," Okonkwo said dryly. Chen smiled. "Oh, we prepared for 43 years to have this conversation. I expect we can handle what comes next." She turned from the window. "Get some rest, Captain. Tomorrow we start the next phase. Formal diplomatic relations, technology exchanges, cultural contact. All the things that should have happened first if the Valorians had approached us as equals instead of prey. You think others will? Some will. Some won't. We'll deal with each situation as it comes. Chen paused at the doorway. But they'll all remember what happened when the Valorian Empire issued final terms to Earth. They'll remember that humanity rewrote them, and they'll think very carefully before making that same mistake. In the weeks that followed, 17 species requested formal diplomatic contact with Earth, and 9 of them were minor powers that had lived under the threat of conquest. 5 were neutral observers interested in trade and cultural exchange. 3 were major empires suddenly very interested in understanding their new neighbor. The galactic balance of power shifted, not through war or conquest, but through a single, perfectly executed demonstration. The age of casual subjugation didn't end overnight, but it had been dealt a blow it would never fully recover from. On Earth, life continued much as it always had. Cities glowed, ships launched, research continued. The planet that had seemed so vulnerable, so isolated, so ripe for conquest revealed itself to be something far more formidable. Humanity had spent 4 decades preparing for the moment when the galaxy finally noticed them, when the ultimatum finally came, when the test finally arrived. And when that moment came, humanity didn't just pass the test, they rewrote it. In the depths of space, invisible to all sensors, human vessels continued their patient watch, ready, prepared, hoping they'd never need to demonstrate their capabilities again, but absolutely certain they could if required. The Valorian Empire had learned the hard way. Never mistake patience for weakness, silence for ignorance, or restraint for inability. Humanity had rewritten the terms, and in doing so had rewritten the rules of the galaxy itself. Far from Earth, in a secure imperial facility, analysts reviewed the data from Sol system for the 1,000th time. They ran simulations, they modeled scenarios, they tried to understand how a single system species had achieved what should have been impossible. And slowly, or reluctantly, they began to accept the truth. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Empire. They'd been capable of defeating them for 16 years. They'd simply chosen to wait for the right moment. The perfect demonstration. The one encounter that would announce their presence to the galaxy on their own terms. The Empire had thought they were the hunters. They'd been wrong. Humanity had been studying them, learning from them, preparing for them. And when the Empire finally arrived with their ultimatum, with their threats, with their certainty of superiority, humanity had been ready. The analysts' reports concluded with a single recommendation: never underestimate humanity again. It was a lesson the galaxy would spend generations learning. What do you think about this clash between alien arrogance and human power? Share your thoughts below, and remember to like and subscribe for more HFY stories.